So Alhamdulillah, we're now halaqa 12. We're going to continue with the early childhood of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, and we've heard about, of course, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam before revelation. So we heard about his, what we call rida, his suckling incest with the habit of the Arabs and Quraysh in particular, in Abu Bakr ibn Sa'd with Halim al-Sa'diyya radiallahu ta'ala anha. And then we also heard the waqi of Shaykh al-Sadr, Islam's chest was split, cut, and his heart was removed and cleaned. And then after this incident, then he was returned with the fear of Halima. So he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, returned back to his mother after that event, and he was of an age of around 3 to 4 years. So now, his childhood, we don't have a lot of documentation, obviously, during that time. Now, if you remember that Sayyidina Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, his grandfather, when he proposed for his son Abdullah, father of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, to Amina bint Wahab. So, not only was that appeal conceded to, but also her sister Hala also was married to his grandfather. The grandfather and son, or the father and son, they both married. So Abdullah married Amina, and then his father married his sister Hala bint Wahab. And from that marriage was the Sayyidina Safiya and the Sayyidina Hamza radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. So they were actually the aunt and the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were the similar age, right? So Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam grew up, and so that was. It's interesting that when Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam was first given prophethood, and he went onto Jabal Abi Qubais, and he called Quraysh together, and then he said, oh so and so, I cannot help you and save you from Allah. So he called out Safiya. Oh Safiya, so anyway, so they grew up as children together in Makkah. So at the age of 6, now Amina, mother of Rasulullah, so she now decides to take her young son to see his maternal ancestors, or his maternal uncles, as it were, because of the fact that, if you remember, if we go back even farther, remember that the great-grandfather of Rasulullah, Hashim, had actually married, from the Bani Najjar, from Yathrib. The condition was that she would stay there, and the children would stay there, and then ultimately, father passed away, and then Talib, his son Shayba, Talib, ultimately came to Makkah with his brother. So, the mother of Abdul Muttalib was from Bani Najjar. Okay, and also, his father Abdullah had passed away there and was buried there. So, meet and connect with his tribesmen from his great grandmother's side, or his great grandmother's side, and also perhaps to the tomb of his father. So she undertook that journey with Rasulullah, and Ayman was also the slave of Muttalib, and then became the slave of Abdullah and Amina. And she remained with Rasulullah throughout his life. Later on, we'll see that. So at the age of 6, the mother travels with Rasulullah to Yathrib, Medina Manawwara, which was later called. So they visit their Khazraji relatives from the side of the great-grandmother, and he enjoys the company of his tribesmen, and it's said that he learned swimming also, and kite flying. Perhaps they had kite flying. Oh, it's mentioned. So in any case, and also, Rasulullah mentioned that you should teach your children three things: teach them swimming, archery, and horseback riding. So our children, they know gaming and they know iPhones. But the Arab children, they would learn, Rujuliya. They would learn, and these are all, these are all endeavors that were not just pastimes, but they had their purpose. Swimming, obviously, find yourself in the middle of the sea and the ship sinks. So swimming is very useful. It's one of the best exercise forms that there is as well. And of course, horseback riding. These are also alat jihad. These are all very useful talents and useful skills. So now, what happens on their way back to Mecca? They haven't passed it. They've just undertaken their journey. They reached a place called Abwa. And there, Amina becomes sick, and her condition very quickly deteriorates, and she dies there. So now Rasulullah lost his father before he's even born, and now his mother is only 6 years old, and on the way back, and now they're on the journey as well. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes his mother. He's there left with Mu'ayman, who's always looking after him, and now he takes Rasulullah and accompanies Rasulullah back. You can imagine, this young child, he never knew his father, and now his mother is gone. So he comes back to Makkah, and now the twice orphaned child is nursed. And so, returning back to Makkah, so Abdul Muttalib now takes care. He takes charge of his grandson. And since he had lost his son, and his son was the son Abdullah was the one that he was, is his favorite son, and the one he was most hopeful that he would become something great. And now, he's taken down his grandson, take the place of his son, you could say as much. And the relationship between Abdul Muttalib and Rasulullah was extraordinary. Even, of course, Abdul Muttalib also has his own sons, many of them. But he shows preference for Rasulullah. A special relationship. It's even mentioned that, as we talked about earlier, that Muttalib used to be so great. And he would keep his, he would have a bedding there in the Hatim, and he would rest over there, stay over there. His majlis would be there at the Kaaba. And so in his majlis, he would have his own sort of place of sitting, his own sort of blankets, or what have you. And so his sons would sit around, that sort of sitting place. They wouldn't actually sit on the sitting place, but they would sit around it. So once Rasulullah was on as a young boy, he came and he just sat there, do that, that's against the etiquette, And so his uncles would say, no, you have to, he used to actually keep him on his functions there. And so obviously there was a very special relationship. However, that relationship was short-lived, and within 2 years, also his grandfather passed. So now, and after passing away, if you remember that Abdul Muttalib was in charge of Siqaya, which was the position of granting the water to the pilgrims, which is a very auspicious station and position. That was handed over to Sayyidina Abbas, his son Abbas, was his youngest son, but again, very favored by his father. And that station and mansib remained with Abbas up until Islam, and also remained with it. In Hajj al-Wada also, Sayyidina Abbas sought permission from Rasulullah to remain in Makkah, carry out those responsibilities which Rasulullah conceded to. Okay, so now Abdul Muttalib also passes away, and now he gives instructions to his son Abu Talib, who is also the full brother of Abdullah. Now he had many other sons as well, who were older and who were in better financial position, but this recommendation was given to Abu Talib to look after Muhammad, being that he had perhaps he saw in him more concern, more love and affection, which played out to be true absolutely. And even though he never accepted Islam at the very end, he was the right hand of Rasulullah in shape and form. Allahu Akbar. So he and his wife Fatima bint Asad, Rasulullah very lovingly, very caringly. And as we mentioned, there was many other of his uncles that could have looked after him, but he was selected Abu Talib. So, also, what's mentioned in the books of Sirah that Abu Talib, just as if you remember Halim, he experienced all that special barakah with the presence of Rasulullah. First, her own milk started flowing, and then her camel, the milk started, and then her donkey, and then so much barakah was there, they're in the desert and with their food and everything. So similarly, Abu Talib and his family were experiencing this. It's even mentioned that when Rasulullah happened not to be there, they would find that barakah in their ta'am and in their food and their drinking. Obviously, also barakah was somehow that were even before prophethood. And so now there's two stories that we want to relate. And one is what is known as Arif. Arif is kind of like a soothsayer kind of a guy. The Arab culture. This fellow would come and he would look at the individual, the children. He would kind of, as we say, yatawassam. He would kind of, sort of, as the diviners, they do this, and he's going to, some sort of soothsaying or fortune telling. So this fellow used to come to Makkah, and he was from Bani Lahab, which was from Azd al-Shanua, from the side of Yemen. So this fellow used to come to Makkah, and so the Quraysh used to bring their children and then say, okay, what's going to happen with this kid, Okay. And so they would look at him and he would say such and such and such. So also Abu Talib brought over this occasion. And so seeing Rasulullah sort of took notice, and then he got diverted and he was busy with it, and then then he asked, where's that child? So now Abu Talib already gets some kind of feeling this fellow is a little bit suspicious, and he sort of fears about him and hides him away, fearing that maybe some really evil eye or maybe some wrong intention might be working underneath this event. So that fellow says, no, where's that boy? Bring that boy to me, because he's going to have, yukuna lahu sha'an. There's going to be a great. So even though, we don't go along with all of that soothing with it, but, because apparently this fellow, if the narration, again, it's a historical narration which Allah knows best about, the authenticity, but it's a well-known story, so perhaps we should do that. And then finally, the story of Bahira, which is a very famous story. There is some question about it. It's so well known, it's almost like what you would say. So basically, what happens is that Abu Talib, being that as the Quraysh would go on their yearly journeys from Syria and towards Yemen, so I'm there. He was preparing to go to Syria in that caravan. And Rasulullah was probably around 12 years old at that period. And there was such a close relationship. 12-year-old children generally don't go in trade caravans. Dangerous expedition, right? However, Rasulullah it's related that he pleaded with his uncle that take me along with you. So he can see them. So he took him. Now, on the way, coming into southern Syria, a place known as Bukhara in those days, so there was this monk Bahira. They say that he was one of the most, if not the most learned Christian scholar and monk of that time in that area. And what's related is that as that caravan was coming, and they used to actually pass by, his, what they call the Suma, his monastery. And so these caravans used to pass, in front of him, and he used to observe that. Now this time he's observing something very strange, and that is that he's observing that over this caravan there's a clouds that are moving along with the caravan. And particularly the shadow of these clouds is now shadowing on a particularly young boy, not on the rest of them. So the caravan is moving along, and the clouds are moving along, and the shadow is on this one boy. So he's something, right? So now, as the caravans usually used to get down there, this indicates. So now, not as a custom or not customarily, now he has called all of the caravan to come and join for dinner with him. So, what's this? You never used to do that. I said, yeah, but everybody, I want your caravan to come, everybody. You're young, you're old, you're free, you're slave, whoever it is, bring them all here. Okay? So everybody came, and, in Arab culture, the young boys don't, la yusad jalis al-kibar, as we say. They don't attend the gatherings of the elders. That's not, that's not the etiquette. So being the custom, as it were, so Rasulullah being here, well, he stayed back, in the camp, and he didn't join them in that. So now, when everybody comes, so Bahira is looking, everyone, where is that person that, but he doesn't see the signs of anyone special. Then he asks, is everybody here? And they said, yeah, everybody's here except one young boy who's back. They called him. And when he came, then he saw this. Not only that, also another thing that they mentioned that when not only the clouds were giving shadow to Rasulullah, they said also while he was resting, Rasulullah resting in the trees, he said that the branches of those trees also came together to form a shade also for Rasulullah under those trees. Anyway, so this fellow had seen that, and so he realized that this young boy is going to be something. So anyway, when Rasulullah actually does come, so now Bahira starts asking a lot of questions, things concerning his condition, what he sees in his sleep, different situations, all this kind of things. And then ultimately, he sees also the Khatam of Nabuwa. There used to be a sign, it was a kind of a bowl between the large one, about the size of the old traditional dollars. Have any of you seen that silver dollar? That doesn't exist anymore, huh? Do you still have them? When I was a kid, we used to have those. Between the shoulders of the Rasul itself, there was actually a physical bowl kind of a thing that was also perhaps mentioned in these old scriptures, that these are the signs of this last prophet to come. So he also found that this is the bottom of the khatam of the shoulders, and so he calls Abu Talib and says, who is this? Who is this child in relation to you? He says, this is my son. He says, no, it's not your son. He says, it's not meat. This boy, his son, his father is not supposed to be. So then, hearing that, Abu Talib said, yes, that's correct. His father and his uncle. His father passed away when he was the whole story. So Bahir is listening to that story. He says, take your nephew back to his place. Beware of the Jews regarding him. By Allah, if they see in him what I see, they will surely try to harm him. Ready, there's to be a great affair. So take him swiftly back to his place. So now, Abu Talib, knowing previously that this is a special child, now he knows this is an extra special child. So extra special care will be granted to him, and as we'll see in the chapters coming up, inshallah ta'ala. So that is what we wanted to cover today. Any questions on that? No questions. It's not the type of thing where you actually would have questions.
Just Bahira being a monk.
Huh?
Bahira was a monk.
Yeah.
That means Christianity was there in the.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. We mentioned earlier on, perhaps you weren't there for this session. We talked about the very strong presence of, even among the Christian Arabs, the tribe of Ghassan and Lahm. These two tribes were both Christian tribes, who had accepted Christianity before Islam. And Ghassan was allied with the Roman Empire. And ultimately, they joined forces with them towards the end of the Prophet of Rasulullah. And then Lahm was aligned with Persia. That's another. So yes. Also, it's interesting, it's mentioned in Ibn Hisham that in the conversation that Bahira had with the caravan, so he asked her, is everybody here? And so one of the Qurayshis, he said, Billati wal Uzza. He swore by Lat and Uzza that everybody came except this one boy. So when Rasulullah actually came and Bahira started questioning, he said, I ask you, he says, I ask you in the name of Lat and Uzza, tell me the truth, about this. So Rasulullah is mentioned there. Rasulullah replied, I don't go along with Lat and Uzza. I never used to believe in them. Ask me anything, and they have been hated by me since the very beginning. He said, so Bahira said, he was a Christian monk also, so he had nothing to do with Lat and Uzza. He said, actually, I said that because I heard your own tribesmen, that's what they swore by. That's not Allah. He said, if you want to ask, he swore by Allah. So then he sort of swore by Allah. Right? Then Rasulullah began to. So they had actually in their scriptures, you'll see also in the first chapter of Sahih Bukhari, a long narration about the questions that Hiraqal also asked Abu Sufyan concerning Rasulullah before Abu Sufyan actually accepted Islam. And so they had a lot of information. And that's why he said, don't let the Jews find you. Let them see, be careful. Because, if they come to find out that he is who he is, and probably he's referring to the fact that he's not from them. Now, had he been from them, no issue. But since he's not from them, that's going to be a big issue, as it turned out definitely to be, and remains. Yeah. So there's also a strong Christian presence in Najran, in Yemen, the side of Yemen, because there's the side of Habasha and also the side of the Romans. So there's a strong.
Unlike the Jews who were there in Medina, Christians never really.
No, Christians were not there. There were a few individuals that just happened to be there, but there wasn't a presence of Christian community as such. But there definitely was a very strong presence of the Jewish tribes. There were three major Jewish tribes in Medina: Qainuqa, Qurayza, and Banu Nadir. So they were there waiting, actually. Somehow or another, they found themselves there, and after seeing the environment, they identified that this seems to be the place where the last prophet is going to migrate to. So they always considered this going to be from the lineage of Ishaq, Israel, but it didn't turn out that way. So as a result, they opposed, except for a few of them. Anything else? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.